In this two-part series, we break down the November JW broadcasting piece by piece, layer by layer, to discuss the underlying message behind the message. Buckle up, because this is going to be a rough ride. If you're new here, welcome to Tell Me Dr. K, a channel manipulative religious leaders wish you never discover. I'm Dr. K, a theologian and international consultant. If you crave for deep dives like this one, subscribe and smash the notice bell so that you don't miss what is coming next. When a message feeds your soul, you feel nourished. But when it quietly tells you what to eat, when to eat, and who to thank for that meal, that is not nourishment. That is conditioning. Now, I've not done a breakdown of the JW broadcasting for quite a while now, but I'm compelled to do an analysis of the November JW broadcasting by Jeffrey Jackson. At first, the November 2025 JW broadcasting hosted by Jeffrey Jackson feels warm, inspiring, and spiritually uplifting. But if you listen beneath the rhythm of its phrases, something else is happening. This is not merely a call to faith. It's a carefully constructed psychological pattern designed to cultivate dependency under the banner of devotion, feeding the inner person, creating hunger before providing the meal. Now, Jackson's opening metaphor of feeding the inner person immediately frames viewers as spiritually in need. On surface, it sounds pastoral and kind, an invitation to spiritual self-care. But embedded within it is the first control lever, spiritual scarcity. Here is the clip. Pay attention to what Jeffrey Jackson is going to teach.
Have you ever been so busy or engrossed in a project that you suddenly experience an intense feeling in your stomach? What is it? Yes, it's probably hunger. Your body is telling you that it's time to eat. That's a normal feeling, one that we all are familiar with. Hunger alerts us to the need to eat. Without it, we could perhaps neglect our physical need for food, which could lead to serious problems. Unfortunately, today, hundreds of millions of people can't satisfy their hunger properly because of a lack of food or resources. For them, hunger is a constant problem. But whatever our situation, we all agree that hunger alerts us to a basic need, the need for food. There's another essential type of hunger that most people on this planet are totally unaware of. What is it? Jesus spoke about it when he was very hungry. It was just after his baptism. Let's read the account found at Matthew 4, verses 1 through 4. Then Jesus was led by the Spirit up into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. After he had fasted for 40 days and 40 nights, he felt hungry. And the tempter approached and said to him, "If you are a son of God, tell these stones to become loaves of bread." But he answered, "It is written, man must live not on bread alone, but on every word that comes from Jehovah's mouth." Jesus recognized that while we need physical food, our primary concern should be to satisfy our spiritual need. This includes having a desire to know God and to seek his approval. Jesus emphasized this point in his Sermon on the Mount when he said, "Those hungering and thirsting for righteousness will be satisfied." It's dangerous for us to go through life taking care of only our physical needs while neglecting our spiritual needs. Literal bread can satisfy our physical desires, but no satisfaction comes if we neglect spiritual things. That's why Jehovah says, "Listen intently to me and eat what is good, and you will find great delight in what is truly rich." So how can we summarize what we've discussed so far? Well, basically, we need to feed ourselves spiritually every day.
Jackson rewires spiritual hunger into organization hunger. The believer becomes dependent not on faith itself, but on an organization as the dispenser of the spiritual food. He warns that neglecting this spiritual feeding schedule leads to emptiness and weakness. That's guilt conditioning. Your doubt or fatigue is proof that you haven't eaten enough of their food. Once that connection is established, the next step feels natural. If you must eat daily, you must also return daily. And that leads directly to the next theme: day renewal and joy, turning routine into obedience. Day renewal sounds harmless, even beautiful, but it transforms repetition into righteousness. Joy becomes a measurable output of compliance. If you are happy, you are feeding right. The imagery of recharging like a battery further mechanizes faith. The believer is no longer a seeker of truth, but a maintenance device that must be plugged into the organization power every day. And when daily compliance becomes normal, sacrifice can be introduced next. Not as obligation, but as a privilege. That's where the broadcast clearly transitions. Here is a clip.
Recalling a beautiful meal we enjoyed in the past. We'll want to try it again. Another scripture that will help us to improve our spiritual appetite is 2 Corinthians 4:16. "Therefore we do not give up, but even if the man we are outside is wasting away, certainly the man we are inside is being renewed from day to day." Notice that we need to be renewed from day to day. So taking in spiritual food needs to be done daily. Impossible? No. Let's illustrate. Most of us have a cell phone that we usually need to recharge at some point during the day, perhaps when we're not working. If we don't recharge the phone, we all know what will happen. It's frustrating when we want to use our phone and the battery is dead. It can even be dangerous in an emergency. The same is true when it comes to keeping our spiritual batteries charged. So when it's time to recharge your phone, why not ask yourself, have I also recharged myself spiritually today? What's the lesson for us? Happy is the man who finds wisdom and the man who acquires discernment. It is a tree of life to those who take hold of it, and those who keep firm hold of it will be called happy.
Britted branch dedication, sacrifice as sanctity. The footage of branch dedication is radiant. Smiling volunteers, pristine construction sites, harmonious music. But this isn't a simple update. It's a propaganda of obedience. Every joyful face preaches a sermon. Obedience brings happiness. That is the sermon. That is the message. Nothing is done for nothing for the governing body of the Jehovah's Witnesses. Everything is meticulously calculated to a fine detail. Exhaustion is framed as holiness, and paid labor as divine privilege. Here is the clip.
Recently, the newly constructed branch in Britain was dedicated to Jehovah. In the following video report, you'll learn of the immense amount of work required to complete the branch office and the positive effects volunteering for this theocratic construction project had on the workers.
This dedication program was so exciting so encouraging. We saw people from all around the world. Many of us haven't seen some of our friends for years, but to see them here together to dedicate this beautiful branch to Jehovah has been a real privilege for all of us.
All of the association and the fun activities have reminded us of what Jehovah has accomplished here. We have been witnesses to an amazing transformation.
Jehovah obviously saw that a project of this nature could really encourage our brothers and sisters. And with his spirit,
All things are possible.
It took 3 years to clean the site. I mean, the work that went into that was just tremendous.
As the site progressed, we were able to plant a further 1,000 trees.
Because the land was restored, as it were, the wildlife returned to the site. We see the deers, we see badgers, we see ducks, we see hares, and it was beautiful because it gave us a glimpse into what the paradise would be like.
but what was even more encouraging was seeing how Jehovah used this project to train and to enthuse his servants.
Viewers observe that serving the organization physically is a visible measure of faith. The edifice itself becomes symbolic, a temple not only of worship, but of unwavering submission.
I was a bit apprehensive because I didn't feel like I had enough skills for it. But when you put yourself out there for Jehovah, you really see how Jehovah trained you and molded you to be a better Christian.
I think it helped us to see a different life in the truth. So it helped us make different spiritual goals that we probably would never have made otherwise. And we've never stopped since.
The branch relocation project really helped to build my faith in knowing that whatever we give up for Jehovah, he gives back so much more.
When we look at the buildings, we see something beautiful, but behind it, we see the love for Jehovah, the love for his work that motivated the brothers and sisters to make all sorts of sacrifices. No wonder Jehovah blessed this project.
Do you desire to dedicate this branch office and will add the attached Kingdom Hall property to Jehovah God to be used exclusively for his praise and glory and to promote his pure worship in your branch territory?
Once viewers internalize sacrifice equals sanctity, the program shifts seamlessly to emotional proof. Personal transformation seems miraculous. Negeo's transformation, submission as healing. Now you have to understand that Negeo's transformation from a violent past to spiritual peace functions as a testimonial that the organization's way works. The emotional arc is familiar. Brokenness leads to submission. Submission leads to redemption.
When someone learns the truth and makes changes to worship Jehovah properly, it brings us great joy. Nigel Baker was just such a man. He needed Bible truth to help him break free from what he describes as a cycle of violence.
Growing up, and my dad would come home and just be violent, beat mum up, beat us all up. When he was off the drink, he was a good man, but he drank so much. I just hoped Jehovah would take it away. Mum looked after us and she taught us about Jehovah. But as I got older, the only way that I thought I could deal with it is to take it into my own hands. And when I turned 17, just on 18, I got a job and I left. I was really fearful of any sort of conflict. I was in a protection mode every day. My goal at that time was to build a reputation of being a tough guy so that no one would mess with me. I came in contact with a number of people who trained in combat sports. That was a way of protecting myself. I spent many years studying different techniques from violent sports. I trained every day. If I didn't train, I felt like I was getting weak. I ended up getting employment, nightclub doors. It wasn't uncommon to have 3 or 4 fights, more, throwing people out each night I worked. After I had a fight, I felt good, but inside I felt bad. I really did. Because sometimes you've done some damage. Contempt and violence and greed just kept growing. I could even drive uptown and someone looked at me in a way that I thought was wrong. It would make me angry. It really made me feel that I could stand up to anyone. And then I got a call. My mum ended up going into the intensive care unit. I didn't think we were going to lose her. I thought she'd live longer. It really made me sit back and think, well, what have you done with your life? After the operation, brothers knocked on the door and I started to study. I was fearful that others what they would say about me, or if I was confronted. But my trust was in Jehovah. Sometimes I'm challenged to do things that could bring back an old attitude. I just pray to Jehovah quickly, and his protection is there. He doesn't jump out and say, well, I'll take the fight up for you. You just feel a different calm. A calm comes over you. I can certainly say that my family noticed the dramatic changes. They saw things in me that disappeared. I don't have this pretense anymore that I have to protect myself. Jehovah protects us.
Nigel took his Bible study seriously and made big changes. Are you eager to learn, as eager as you were when you first learned the truth? We must stay teachable.
The message behind the message is that healing cannot take place outside the organization. So for you to be transformed from a violent past, from drugs, from moral depravity, whatever it is, addiction to alcohol, addiction to drugs, addiction to immorality, you need to belong to the Jehovah's organization for you to be transformed. Personal effort, therapy, or outside guidance vanish from the narrative. Only organization obedience saves. This is an emotional hook. Once viewers believe that the organization heals wounds, no one else can. They are primed to forever remain teachable. They are primed to remain inside the spiritual temple. So the next lesson is framed as a virtue, humility, being teachable, humility as an intellectual service. The morning worship segment on teachability gently defines curiosity as danger. Being teachable sounds noble, but in this context, it means accept a hierarchy without question. Critical thought is framed as pride. Compliance becomes the highest level of wisdom.
Are you eager to learn, as eager as you were when you first learned the truth? We must stay teachable. Brother John Ekron will show us how in the following morning worship.
Let's read our scripture text, Acts chapter 4 and verse 13 in its entirety, because I'd like to concentrate on the second part of the verse. It says, "Now when they saw the outspokenness of Peter and John and perceived that they were uneducated and ordinary men, they were astonished, and they began to realize that they had been with Jesus." Now, of course, it says they were uneducated and ordinary, at least from their point of view. The study note points out that doesn't mean that they didn't know how to read and write, but they just had not been to the rabbinic schools. But notice what the second part of that verse says, that they were astonished and that they began to realize they had been with Jesus. So the religious leaders could see that his disciples had learned and been good students, and that they were copying Jesus' methods and way of teaching. So while they hadn't been to rabbinic schools, they had been to a much better school, the one Jesus was teaching them, and they learned from him. Well, what can we learn from the example of Jesus' apostles and disciples? They were teachable. Now, to be teachable means to have a willingness or readiness to learn or receive instruction. And being teachable is really an important quality for all of us to have. Let's consider a few qualities that are very helpful for being teachable. First of all, let's consider the quality of being humble. Let's look at Proverbs chapter 15 and verse 33. The fear of Jehovah is a training in wisdom, and before glory there is humility. See the connection there between getting trained and humility? It's hard to learn when you have the attitude of, I know. And even if we think we know, listen carefully when someone is trying to teach you something. You might be surprised and actually learn something. Yes, no matter how much we know, it certainly should humble us to realize that there's no limit to what we can learn from Jehovah, his works, and his ways.
This section completes the psychological cycle. Self-doubt equals need equals obedience. The believer now feels both dependent and morally obligated to remain pliable. And just as this thought pattern locks in, the broadcast hints at a moral enforcement. And what happens to those who remain unteachable? If obedience is good, the logic goes, then disobedience must be punished. That idea sets a stage for the next half of the story, the return to private submission, to collective enforcement. In episode 2, we uncover how this simple broadcast transforms justice, compassion, and even music into a tool of control. How love becomes the mechanism that seals obedience into the heart. To watch episode 2, click on this link.